Awesome. Hey guys, you found us on the Wise Guys channel, and we are talking about the head center in human design today. So we've been going through the different centers. So if you missed some, be sure to check out the past classes. And what we're doing is we're going to talk about the not self themes. It's defined, not defined, what that means. Alicia's going to lead us through kind of a lecture style. And then we're going to have time to ask questions about the head center, but really about anything human design related at the end. So thanks, Leisha.
Yeah, I'm excited. It was good for me to look at this because I have an undefined head center, which 70% of humanity does. So I don't know, do either of you, does anybody on the call have you have an undefined, Shelley? You have it defined.
So is mine.
And wow, we have a great proportion of, we can learn from you guys too, because I can only really know what undefined feels like. So, because that's what I am. Yeah, so are y'all ready to jump in, Tiff, or did you want to say anything else before? Yeah? Oh, April's here too. Yay. Hi, April. Okay, so the head center is at the top of the body graph. Now I can share my screen if it's helpful. I don't know if it is. Hi. But it's the very top, center. Of course, we have 9 centers. Let me back up if if you're just getting into human design or watching this, as a first kind of step into human design. Human design is really a system for making decisions as yourself. And the body graph, which is 9 centered, I'll go ahead and just share for now, since we'll be able to reference it. The body graph is 9 centered, and what we've been doing is sort of looking at each center and how the functions, and kind of if it's colored in, which means defined, or if it's undefined, which is it's white. And the mechanisms there, because as we learn the mechanisms with our human design, our particular activations that we can see, in the body graph, we start to, realize and kind of see how that's showing up in our lives. And then we can kind of relax back into what we actually are, instead of, trying to, be all the things that are kind of the white areas, which is the not self. So human design allows us to make decisions as ourselves by understanding our mechanics and operating correctly in the life that we're in. And it's so unique to each person. There's no one size fits all. And it gives us a very clear strategy and authority to navigate all decisions, big, small, everything in our lives, which is what life is. It's all these tiny decisions and big decisions, right? And before we get into the head center, it's really, because I like to say these things multiple times and hear these things multiple times, because it starts to mean more and more as I continue to experiment in my own life. And experiment is kind of the key word I wanted to just always mention again. It's an experiment. There's no right or wrong. There's no believing it. It's find out your mechanics and then start messing with it. Try to follow your strategy and authority and see what happens. Collect that piece of data. How do I feel? What resistance or success or satisfaction did I experience, or peace or surprise? What, and then another time, don't follow it. Just say, not doing it. I'm going to initiate and work hard and do like what I've always done, regardless of, I don't care the strategy and authority. Try that and see what you experience. Do you experience frustration, bitterness, anger, disappointment, resistance in some physical form, emotional, whatever? So it's all about over time collecting that data and gradually relaxing the mind back into kind of this passenger consciousness, riding in the back of the vehicle and trusting that life will take care of us. Surrendered. I love the word surrendered. Is like, am I surrendered right now in this moment? That's a constant question I ask myself. That does matter. Getting to the head center. Okay, so the head center, I would love to kind of talk about the functions of that center and kind of sort of how the mechanics of it works, and then kind of get into what defined and undefined and all of those kind of things look like. Does that sound good to everyone? Okay. So the head center is a pressure. So it's the very top of the body graph. It's that top triangle at the top. And then of course, if you think about, it's like there's a pressure sandwich. Human beings are a pressure sandwich. We've got this pressure center from the top to figure things out and to understand and to make sense of life. And we've got this sort of root center pressure from the bottom, which is really about, it's adrenalized kind of vitality, adrenalized, it's like stress, adrenalized, fuel to live life, to have experiences, to move, to create, right? So it's figuring things out and trying to, need to use this vitality to create. It's like, that's what human beings are, right? So this is a mental pressure, Now this is more of a kind of a fuel and adrenalized, a stress, a movement kind of thing. It's not an awareness center, the root. So we're just thinking about like all the things in the middle is, there's a lot of mechanics there, but this is kind of what we're talking about today, is this kind of this pressure sandwich. So the head center has this inherent, every human has a mental pressure to figure things out, like we said, to take in inspiration, to be inspired by things, to answer questions, to find the answers to life's questions, to their own life's questions, to eliminate doubts, to process doubts, to solve confusion and kind of move it through to like to realization from confusion, right? So, and I'm naming particular words that are actually in these different gates in the head center, so we'll get to that in a minute. But it's this pressure for figuring things out, like you kind of for taking in life and moving through the confusion, doubt, and kind of knowing, right? So the biological, like the body association with it, is the pineal gland. And that really is regulating the flow of information between the gray matter in the brain and the neocortex. Now, the neocortex is in the ajna center, which is kind of this next, this is the head center here, and the ajna center is the next one down, which is, thought. It's like all this information comes into the head center, and now in the ajna, which I guess opposite triangle, anyway, y'all get it, is where it's now we've got to organize that information. We've got to come out with thoughts, opinions, insights. We conceptualize it and organize it in a certain way. And then it can move down, if you're looking at the circuitry of it, down to the throat, which is manifestation or speaking it into the world, right? Where, in the term of human design, in the manifestation definition of that, it's bringing it from just in your head into form, potentially by sharing it with someone else, by speaking it out loud. So just to kind of give an idea of how that energy moves through from the head center, it comes in, it's a pressure to figure it out. What is this? I'm confused. What, I don't get it, because it hasn't been answered yet. Now it has to organize itself, and then it can go through, kind of the rest of the circuitry in the body graph. So it's this pressure that drives mental activity, right? To understand, to think, all those things. Okay, and then let's see. It's also, what I love in human design, the word inspiration. This is such a good reminder for me as I'm putting together my notes on this. Inspiration is things that have not yet been grasped. So we often, I feel like in human language, human design is kind of its own language, as we've kind of said before, and it's clear as you start to, hear it and use it and understand it and work with it. But inspiration in human design, I feel like in regular language, we feel like that's a very positive word, and and it is, but it's also what has not been grasped. Grasped. It can also be, confusion. It can be, I got all this information from all these people and I'm not sure how to move forward, or I've done this thing and now I doubt that, like, does that even make sense? And so it's kind of this, inspiration is what has not yet been grasped. So I like that kind of awareness, to think of inspiration coming in. Now it's just going to have to sit there for a minute, and there's this pressure to kind of grasp it, right? So it's really these different ways we have, depending on your activations in your head center, these different ways we have of taking in information from the cosmic field of consciousness, from the collective consciousness, right? And that, that's a nuance, because if you're a defined head, which is 30% of humanity, it's not the majority, then you're actually inspiring others. You're actually conditioning others in those ways. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay, so looking at the gates, we've got only 3 gates that come out of the head, right? There's not if you look at the throat, there's like a bajillion gates that come out of the throat. There's most centers have way more than 3. Every center has way more than 3. Well, not way more, but more than 3. The head center, though, has 3 gates. So it's the gate 64, which is confusion after completion. I mean, before completion. So it's like Tiffany has that one in an undefined head, right? So it's this inconsistent relationship with how that confusion before the project's done, right? Before the communication's out, before the information has all come in, whatever. It's kind of this, I gotta like organize this. But depending on who you're around and depending on kind of a lot of different environmental circumstances, because it's undefined, it's gonna vary, your relationship with that. Anywhere we're undefined, we are, we're not a fixed, if you have a defined head and ajna, you have a fixed way of thinking. And it's, you can start to see that pattern as you see the mechanics. And of course, you're going to look at what's red, what's black. If it's red, you may not be aware of it. So that's where the experimentation comes in. If it's black, you may be like, I'm kind of aware of that. And then you still have to, see through experimentation. But just naming that, Tiffany, you have the gate 64 in an undefined head, so that you may have it. Sometimes you may not be confused, or sometimes around a certain person, you're not confused. But around, when you're by yourself, you might be confused, or when certain transits are going, the confusion relationship is different. So just naming again that the white areas, there's an inconsistent way that energy will move through. If it's defined, it's a fixed way that is processing. Okay, so 64 is confusion before completion. It's an abstract kind of pressure to make sense of the past and resolve the chaos and confusion. And it's just part of the mental process. So the theme with all of this is learning your mechanics, starting to work with it, and gradually you don't go, I wish I wasn't always confused, or I wish I didn't have to always have doubt happen after I do something, which is the gate I have. Instead, you just go, oh, there it is. There's that old doubt coming in, and accepting that it's your mental process. And then eventually you start to accept it a little bit more and then you start to actually love it. You're like, oh yeah, doubt's going to come in, and look for that logical pattern. So looking at gate 63, which is what I have on the other side, so that's 64 confusion, 63 is doubt. It's doubt once, once the project's done, it's after completion. So then you've got, it's the logical side of, the logical circuitry. 64 is abstract. It's not going to make sense till afterward, looking back, right? It's looking at the past. 63 is logical, and it's looking for kind of this logical, it's like doubting the pattern. What is the logic here, and kind of looking for the pattern for the future. So for me, I feel that doubt coming in. I started to, I learned about it, I started working with it, and now I'm like, sometimes I'm like, the constant doubt, but it's also like kind of you smirk at it a little, like that emoji, that I wish I could put it in maybe you could put it in the chat, I see you, doubt, that kind of thing. So the 61 is a really just really interesting, and whenever it's a fascinating gate to me. I don't have it. It's 61 is an individual gate, so it's a mutative force in a way, right? And this is just, if you have it, your aura is doing this, So say I'm around Tiff and she doesn't have 63, she might find herself doubting when I'm around or something, right? Because it's the aura doing it. It's not anything we're doing on purpose. So the 61 is inner truth or mystery. That's what this gate 61 is. It's like if someone has gate 61, now it'll depend on if they have an undefined head or defined head, and the rest of the activations. But they have this kind of, it's like occult knowledge. It's like this access to kind of know something new, to understand the mysteries, to know the unknowable. And it's kind of, sometimes that can be accessed through life experience and kind of through the life cycle, from, in my opinion, from past lives and things like that. So there's this occult knowledge, but it's inner truth and mystery. So that's really interesting. I love that gate. Before I go into kind of general defined and undefined, does anyone have anything to add, or I want to pause for a second? Does anybody have anything to say or share?
I do, but I can wait if anyone else wants to go first.
I have, okay, so I have a defined head center, and I have 61 all the way through a whole channel. But then, so what if I have a defined head center, but then I'm not defined in the other two gates. So what does that mean for me? That those are
So you'll,
undefined.
yeah, so you
Like they're
have
not,
like,
there's nothing there.
right, there's none of those two side gates, 64,
Right.
47 or 63, 4. So you have so that would be, because that line down the middle and throughout the body graph, any of the channels going down the middle, you know, if you look at kind of, there's this middle line and then there's these one, anyway, are individual, that's individual circuitry. And that is that would, you know, the mechanic would be, I would say, you have a fixed, very individual and mutative way of thinking. It's going to sort of be the same in that it's like, and it works on a pulse. That's how this individual circuitry works. It's like, I don't know, I know, you know, and then it's like, in my experience of friends with the 6124 channel, it doesn't matter, like, if I don't think it's true or not. It's kind of like, I just need to relax back and let them express or invite them to share, because the whole thing is any channel in the head and ajna, between the head and ajna, it really, you have to wait for the right timing and moment, right? Right, you know, it's really their projected channels, which means they should be invited. Now you can mess with it and see, and like, you know what, I'm sharing my knowing, whether I was invited or not, and see what happens, you know, see what you experience, see what resistance pops up, or is that satisfying? You know, for Shelley, you're a generator, would that be satisfying? You know, do you find it satisfying when that happens? Or if you're invited, then, oh, the satisfaction, you know, there won't be resistance, they'll hear you.
Yeah, I
But
guess
yeah,
I feel like, you know, the whole tarot and astrology and metaphysical stuff, and I love that. It speaks to me. I understand that. And when I have a few friends that are kind of into that, they come to me, they're like, hey, I'm calling you because, you know, I want to talk about it. But it's almost like if I talk about it with other people, they're like, eh,
yeah,
you know,
they
so
just
it's almost
probably
like, yeah,
don't
so
hear
yeah,
you.
if I'm invited, then it's like, ooh, we're really, you know, it's great, we can share, but then otherwise it's not. So I'm a little quiet about it. So it's
Yeah,
like, okay, I don't share it all on Facebook, all that, the metaphysics. I'm like, maybe I should. And I'm like, you know, maybe I shouldn't, because I'm just waiting for some people to come to me and then we really click.
yeah, and I mean, I think that's, you know, that's a great experiment. Like if you ever did, you know, feel strongly, or like, you know, you were like, I don't know, well, I know I need to share this, share it and see what happens, you know, and the other thing is, it's always going to go back to your, you know, you're a generator, you're not emotionally defined, right, Shelley? Your sacral authority. Okay, so that means, you know, it's always going to go back to your sacral response. So say someone invites you to share about tarot and metaphysical stuff, which is that occult knowledge. It doesn't mean that if we don't have it defined, we can't access that. It's just the relationship and the way of thinking with it is more flexible in a way. It's not fixed. Which, you know, there's two sides of every coin for every single thing, right? As we know. But it could be that, you know, you're invited, Shelley, will you share this? And then what does your response say? If you're like, then that's like life force energy is not available for that. Whether the mind thinks that makes sense or not, you know, and usually the mind doesn't think it makes sense, but that it would always go back down to the foundational point of your strategy and authority. You know, did it come to you and so you were invited? Now, is it correct for you or not to share that, you know? So yeah, but it is that 6124 is a mutative channel. It's very empowering, just like any mutative channel. Now, mutation is not always comfortable, so it can empower someone, but they could really hate it along the way. You know, and I've experienced that with different friends. But it's still mutative, and so you just start to accept it, and you become surrendered to the mechanics, you know, because they're going to happen whether you're surrendered to them or not. That's kind of the thing. Tiff, did you have?
Yeah, I want to blow our minds for a second
Oh,
here.
do it.
Okay, a couple
Blow our
things,
heads out of this.
5 or 6 bullet points. Ready? Inspire. I love that you use that word. I didn't know you were going to talk about it. And I like that word in like Western language because it means with spirit, to be in spirit. And how you were describing it as like kind of the unknownsies, you know, like I just always like using that word because I'm like, oh yeah, it's not all physical plane stuff, right? Like there's some mystery to it. There's something behind the scenes. One of my questions is about the open head and open root. So I was, you know, we're all conditioned to be that which we're not, right? Like we're all raised by parents that have the opposites, you know, sometimes. And I want to put a pin in that So the open head and root thing I want to talk to about. And then I was looking, this is kind of interesting. So I have open head and I only have the 64 and it's in red, the person,
The unconscious.
the
Design, right? Design.
design,
I mean,
yes, the
yeah.
design side, the red side. And so I just wanted to point out, guys, because this like HD has been mind blowing, and we're talking about the mind. We don't have to understand all of this to just practice with our strategy and authority. So this is like mind candy. We're having fun. We're exploring the chart, but like each of the gates, which I think all of us are a little too new to really go all the way in there, but each of these gates, 64, 61, 63, they could all be lit up red, black, or red and black, right? And so in addition to that, they can be like oh geez, I'm in talking body graph. I hate that side. Mine is like they're
You want me to pull yours up?
It doesn't matter. Just scroll
Okay.
over your 63 for a second and show them that so she's talking about doubt after completion. It's in her design side, the red side, the unconscious side, and then it's in Jupiter, or Jupiter is in the first line. I can't see what that says. But the idea is like there's so many layers to it. There could have been any planet or any of the 6 gates, and each of the 6 gates with each of the planetary combos has a different thing. So I'm gonna pop in the chat the book that a lot of people really agree is the foundational book for human design. That one, thank you. So if you wanted to order it and really geek out on it, you can. I like write all over mine. I write like, oh, Leisha has Jupiter in the 3rd, and I just really, you know what I mean?
And then
like,
I've got tabs in mine, and they're all messed up. And
how can you possibly have tabs in that? What are your tabs?
well,
Yeah.
It's like centers, authority. It's just for ease of turning right to it.
Yes.
Because I'm a nerd. I'm a 1-3, so.
Yes. So I'll pull it up on Amazon and put it in the
Cool.
chat in a second. But I just wanted to point out that we're talking at a very base level, and then there's just a lot more to it. And if you're not ever introduced to it at some point, it's like stays a question mark. It stays back here. So the one thing that I noticed when you were talking, because of course I'm looking at charts, is that I've got open head and 64 in the red side only. Mine is in Jupiter in the 3rd line. Is that how you would say it correctly?
Yeah. Say that one more time.
Jupiter in the 3rd line.
You the gate, and then what line, right? Like, so what gate is in your Jupiter?
Gate 64.
64, sorry, yeah, 64, yeah, gate 64 in the 3rd line, yes.
Okay, and I can see that on, if you guys know the planets, right? You can see like Leisha's scrolled over her Jupiter right now. So her Jupiter is in gate 63 in the 1st line, right? So there's lots and lots of layers to it. But what I was noticing is that my 64, my confusion before completion, like, how's this going to work out? How's this possibly going to work out? Right? Like, that can work against me. Like, this is never going to work out, or it can work for me. I wonder how this could work out. Now, you were talking about it to make sense of the past and resolve the chaos. And I was looking up our incarnation crosses last night in our family. And I have one kiddo that has the right angle cross of consciousness. And that one, the job of that one is to save the collective from repeating what we know and help us experience what we haven't mastered yet. Their motto is been there, done that. And so I have in myself the need to make sense of the past and resolve the chaos, right? I've got to do that. I've got to make sense of the past and resolve the chaos. And then because human design, right, is like for the future generation, I'm also raising someone who has a need to be there and do that, to have experiences, to have them in her past. It's very interesting when you start looking at the intricacies and how, the other people in your life, you don't have to like parent, child, whatever, but it's interesting to see the overlaps there. She has a defined head, and she has all 3 gates, and she has the full 61/24 channel. I'm almost as completely opposite of that as possible. So I wanted to just share that in case it's useful for other people when they're exploring. And then I also just wanted to go back to that open root, open head versus closed? Because you're talking about like a pressure sandwich, but so if like for you, you just have this throat center that's defined. For me, I just have a couple in the middle defined, right? So we don't have the pressure that starts here, but does the pressure start here, or do we just not have it at all? Or how does that open on both sides?
Well, I mean, we can say it's an inconsistent pressure in a way, right? And it depends on our gates and things, because that would be a consistent thing. But if they're in an open center, it's still an inconsistent pressure. With an open head and an open root, they weave together. So it's in a hurry, because the root is, in a hurry to be free of the pressure, right? So it's like, oh, let me hurry up and answer all these people's questions and get through this confusion so that I can be rid of this pressure on both sides, really, right? Like if I have the answers, if I can wade through this confusion and make sense of it, then and I'm just using that as an example, then I can, check that off the list and be done with hurrying. I can finally relax, I can finally rest, I'll finally be satisfied, whatever, because you're a generator. So that's how it can look if you start to weave those together. And I think like being human is pressure. There is a pressure with the way that we operate, and pressure doesn't have to be, like one of my just amazing human design teachers that's been doing it for 30 years or something. I mean, since the beginning, he doesn't use like stress and pressure for the root. He uses like joy, vitality, like it's like this fuel to experience. So it's almost like, not that, I mean, the head center is not necessarily fuel in the same way. It's not a motor, as we call it in human design, but it is a pressure center. It's a pressure for humans to figure things out, because that's the evolution of the species. That's how we've evolved to operate, and our consciousness, has evolved. So anyway, just to say that if it's undefined, if you have an undefined head or root, you're going to have this inconsistent, kind of expression of that pressure. So, potentially there could be, for someone with a defined head and ajna, there's an inherent anxiety, because you are kind of fixed on answering questions, right? And so it's like with an undefined head and ajna, there's an inconsistent relationship with anxiety, whereas a fixed, defined head and ajna, they would have more of a, oh yeah, I definitely have an anxiety thing, like they might have a much more consistent way that expresses.
And even maybe depression is what I notice in my closed head people.
Yes.
Like, I'm just going to shrink away from this because I can't even,
deal with depression, right? And the same with the root, it's potential depression. So it's like, if you think about the relationship to the word pressure, it is it's like there's potential depression in both. I don't know if it lists it here, but I definitely saw it in my in this, like this is the reference manual for human design. This doesn't go into like substructure stuff and arrows and things, but like this is so much, this is like foundational that you don't even need that. And if you study this, for a while,
Alicia,
I like having it all. Yeah.
I connected to some things that you said, like I have some anxiety. I don't have depression, but I have anxiety. And I was like, oh, maybe it's just introversion. I get all this stuff and then I just shut down, and I'm like, nah. Like I can't take it in, my brain can't process or handle it. And I was reading something and it said an undefined head wants to know why, like why, and I'm like, my whole thought was like, I have to explain why. There is no why, it just is. Like that's so that was I was like that. Oh yeah, I'm like, I'm like, oh, people that ask me why, because I guess I just know or whatever. I don't need to know why, because it's just it is.
Oh my gosh.
So, well, and then I get overwhelmed and I'm like, no, go
yes.
away.
Well, and I love, oh my God, everything. It's what matters, because the undefined head, this is the question that are not self. 70% of us are thinking about stuff that doesn't matter. We're trying to answer other people's questions. Someone else is confused, doubtful, or like, whatever. And we're amplifying that. And then we're trying to answer all these questions. So we're, Shelly, why? And you're like, I already know, that doesn't matter. My son is 5 and he's the only one in the house of 4. Well, they're all generators except for me. I'm a projector, but all of us have undefined head and ajna except the 5-year-old. He has a defined head and ajna. And literally he always tells me, it doesn't matter, Mom, that doesn't matter. And I'm like, oh God, I hear that language of that head center and I'm like, drop it, like immediately. And first of all, it doesn't matter to him. It might matter to me, but makes me question, does it really matter? And do I need to push a defined head and tell them that it matters? No, because they're fixed in that way. They're not going to think it matters just because I'm raging that it matters, So
I
yeah,
feel
Shelley,
like I'm pretty flexible and open, so I don't feel like I have like,
yeah, you're
like
not
that kind of,
5,
like,
but yeah.
yeah, like it's not like it's super closed off type thinking, but it's like I know what I know and I don't want to have to explain it to everybody.
And that is your 6124 talking right there. It's knowing, you don't need to explain. It's an inner knowing. It's the inner mystery. Like it's no, I don't know. I know, it's either side of those. So just literally everything you're saying is like, oh, it's just so juicy to hear it come out in the language, Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, April, so you have everyone. So you're the only open head and you live with 2 people with the defined head. You are experiencing a lot of pressure because you're amplifying. I mean, I would say the mechanics, not what you are doing, but the mechanics would be that you would experience a lot of pressure to answer a lot of questions, and probably thinking about a lot of stuff that doesn't matter because they're both conditioning, you in that area. So yeah, I'm gonna go into, let's look a little bit. We covered so much, but so the defined, we said 30% of the population, so it's not a majority. And yeah, everything changed when my youngest son was born and had the defined head nausea swooping in. It was like, oh my God, I can feel this difference, especially, after human design and watching and experimenting with it. It's like, oh, it's very clear now, very clear. Yeah, so it, the defined head ajna can naturally experience anxiety. It can be a difficult, heightened anxiety, but the point is to develop patience with your own mental process. I mean, that's really true for all of us, right? But especially if you've got that fixed way that it happens, is just kind of don't let it dictate the decisions. Like, well, I know, so here we go. I'm deciding and I'm sharing it, and we've all experienced, probably people in our lives that do that kind of uninvited, or maybe we've done it ourselves. And so it's really about patience with your own mental process, and not trying to force it and not trying to pressure yourself to figure it out, and not wishing you weren't confused if you have gate 64, not wishing you didn't doubt everything if you have gate 63, me and April, just being like, yep, there it is. Ooh, I love it. It's looking for what doesn't work in this, or whatever. So, okay. Yeah, so of course, I think we've said this, but just to be clear, the defined head and ajna, the mechanic is that it's putting pressure on others to think, right? If you're defined, you are putting pressure on 70% of humanity to think, and you're not doing it. It's your aura does it, right? Again, it's not, you can say, I don't want to do that. It doesn't matter. Your aura is doing it, whether it's just, are you aware of it or not? Are you embracing it or not? Okay. So again, waiting for the right moment and timing. The not self of the defined head and ajna, the sort of the other side of the coin, because it's beautiful to have this fixed way. It's beautiful to inspire others. It's beautiful to have this fixed way of thinking and to be here to figure out the answers, that's lovely. The other side is you can turn that mental pressure on yourself, and kind of allow yourself to go deep into the anxiety. I have several friends that, I mean, they have so much their defined head and ajna too, that I've talked to that, they have defined head and ajna and they have like a lot of neck problems. And it's not like just like I have anxiety and I'm like, oh, let me breathe and meditate for a minute. Not that can't help them, but it's a bit more heightened than what I would have to, than I could relate to as an undefined head and ajna. So turning the mental pressure in on yourself is watch to not do that, because that's not the purpose of that pressure. And trying to resolve the pressure through taking action. Like maybe, this is gonna, okay, I know I'm gonna do something about it, because it could potentially relieve the pressure. Not that you're logically thinking that, but that's the mechanic behind it. So it becomes watching that. And then being unable to remain patient, resulting in, of course, missed opportunities, increased resistance, like sequences of events that are incorrect. And then you've got to play all those out. So, it's a key to just be patient with our mental process. The healthy version of the defined head and ajna is, or sorry, I keep saying head and ajna. It's just the head. We're going to do ajna next though. Next time. The defined head, healthy expression is accepting the mental pressure without trying to turn it into action or escape from it, and just watching it, knowing that confusion, doubt, and clarity are natural processes with their own timing and resolution. Now that is that's a huge challenge, especially when you get into this experiment and figure out your mechanics and start working with it. It's not so easy, right? Simple, not easy. That's what, me and Tiffany constantly remind ourselves in April. Simple, not easy. And having this ability to uplift and empower others with insights and inspiration. That is, thank you, defined heads, especially correct and aware defined heads. Now the incorrect, or what do we call it? Like the distorted frequency defined heads are not doing us any favors. They're adding a lot of chaos and confusion and, pressuring us to figure things out and all that stuff, and thinking about a lot of things that don't matter. But boy, those correct ones. Ooh, that's good. Okay.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, please.
But like when you said distorted heads, I was like, oh man, because what's interesting is that I had all these like really interesting astrological things line up with the eclipse for me, saw it coming, got the invitation, said yes, and then I was like, no, because what was happening was, what I feel was happening was distorted heads that were involved. Where it was like, it would have been fine if they would have just like let me do my thing. But instead it was like distorted pressure, and I was like, you know what, this is absolutely not going to work at all. And I'm not going to convince you otherwise. And I'm not like blaming a unaware, not self person, but I happen to know their charts, and I'm like, okay, I see this coming.
You could see the mechanics. Yeah,
I could see the mechanics, and it not really shaking out, anytime soon. And so I had to politely decline from something that I was really, really, really looking forward to.
So your response changed because of that distortion, really?
Yes, exactly. It did. And
yeah.
I don't know how else I could have navigated that. I just had to politely decline. And
I think that sounds correct to me. It's just it's if you still went, well, I committed, because you're defined ego, well, I committed, and so now, and undefined solar plexus, I don't want to upset them, I did commit, and and all these things that don't matter, right? And if I just do it, then it'll be done. Undefined root. And so that would have been sort of the distorted frequency in you, but you followed your response of like, my response has changed. And that's the thing with the sacral, the response can change. So, it's learning to navigate that, to honor yourself. So, you could identify with it, you were aware, you could watch it, and then you just honored your own response,
Which I think is the tricky part, because when you are conditioned by distortion and you work so hard to get in alignment with yourself, it's like nothing else is tasty. I'm not going to eat that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be around it. I'm not going to smell it. I'm not going to hear it. It just is too much. It's like, I used to work in bars, and everybody smoked and everybody drank. And when we stopped smoking in bars, right? It was such a big difference. Like, I will never go into a smoky room ever again. Right. And it's kind of like, you couldn't pay me. Right. Maybe you could, but the idea is like, I don't want to be around that frequency. And nothing against smoking. It's just like a very clear, visceral example that I can think of, where it's like, oh, I remember what that feels like. I remember what my hair smelled like. I remember what I woke up. I remember the headache. And it's like that same thing, being around something that is not you, that is not self, that is not aligned, that you're not making progress with. It's like, who's working harder at this? And how precious is my life to me? How much is my worth and self-worth to maintain my alignment, right? And because it's hard won. It's not like, we woke up one day and it's like, oh, I'm just gonna follow my sacral around and everything's gonna, it's like shit has to break down completely. And it's not just a little bit, it's like your whole world starts shattering, right? And then you have to rebuild slowly, inch by inch, not like a fight. It can be smooth, but I find myself like really, really sensitive when I'm noticing the smoky room, you know, centered people.
Yeah, smoky room center. Who has a defined smoky room center?
I gotta go.
No, yeah, I'm out. No, it is true that you become more sensitive to what's incorrect, what is correct and what's not correct to you. So you can't necessarily just go into the smoky room. I mean, it's shocking when I think of certain things, you know, before human design, it's like, I could never do that. Now I literally could not do it, you know? So you do become more sensitive to what is right for you. And it feels so good. That's the thing. It's like, it feels so right that you're like, come what may, because this feels like this is real. You know, this is true. This is me. This is authentic. Yeah.
And how I said no to them was, you know what, when I feel like I'm swimming upstream, that's a clue for me that this isn't going to be a good fit. And I need to say yes to things that feel like swimming downstream. And
Yes. The
you know
surrendered.
yes. And you know who doesn't like that is like our culture. Like
Oh yeah.
everyone, like they want you
Our
to
conditioning.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I was also going to bring up because I believe the gate of doubt is in the transits right now. Yeah. So you might have, you know, been feeling some of that, or it might have hooked up, you know, some concepts for you or something. Either way, you still followed your response, and it comes down to strategy and authority. But just showing that, you know, you've kind of also got to, not, you don't have to, but just as long as you're, you know, following your own mechanics and strategy and authority, you'll navigate the transits and the whatnots correctly. But sometimes it's a little more challenging, or you notice other processes coming up when certain things are activated, because it can define a whole center that you don't normally have defined. Yeah, and you only have an undefined root, which is very fascinating. Every other center is defined. So but it's a lot of defined in red. So it's that thing where it's like, you know, the red is we're not quite aware until we start to work with it and see the mechanics and start to look at that. So that's a really, in fact, you have a lot of channels defined, but you have one channel that's actually black, meaning you might be aware of it, you could relate to it, you identify with it. You know, the rest would be discovered through experimentation, and you're a 1-3, so discovered is the right word. Really,
I thought that's what you had told me before.
Yeah.
But then when we got to talking and I'm looking at the chart and I'm going, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I do that. Yeah.
I don't remember correctly.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
But thank you.
Totally. Okay. So let's look at the undefined head. So this is, again, 70% of the population. Of course, if it's white, it's undefined. There's also completely open head, which would mean there'd be no gates whatsoever on that. Okay. So I'll cover just basically, if you have any centers with no gates. Now, I don't have any of those. I have one gate at least off of every center, but like my sister has an undefined, a completely open head is how we would say that. No gates whatsoever. Oh, and your mom, Tiff, she had, yeah, interesting. So that's like not really knowing what to think, not knowing what's interesting. Anything that has a completely open with no gates, it's almost like a next level wisdom is the potential there after certain life experiences and through age, basically, as you age. Hold on, give me a few minutes, bud. I got a sick kid home. Okay, you can sit right here. I'm talking about you though, with your defined head and ajna. Okay, so the undefined is
Mom, I don't know if I click on something. I went into the stone.
Can you go ask Horizon for help?
Well, I don't know if I pick something that's gonna change to that text.
Oh, okay. Well, I can come help you. Can you watch your iPad for a minute? I'll be right there. Okay. Set a timer. Okay. So, okay. So the not self for the undefined head is thinking about things that don't matter, right? As we've said. Oh yeah, the completely open head center is not knowing what to think. It's whatever, if you have a completely open center, it's not knowing what your relationship is with that thing. So it's like, I don't know what to think. I'm not sure what's interesting or inspiring. I don't know what to be confused or what to doubt or what to know, right? And so you kind of give up authority in a way, like let somebody else sort of take that over, because it can be so confusing that and you have so much doubt that you don't even know what to do. So that's just the completely open center, is like not really knowing what to think or what to feel or what to, what is worth. I'm throwing out a few centers. Okay, so you can become, the open head center, just the undefined head center, can become sort of overwhelmed, lost, easily overwhelmed by doubt and confusion that even belong to others that are conditioning us, right? It can be trying to resolve other people's questions, taking on other people's worries. And again, it's the like trying to take action to resolve the pressure. And that's kind of, you can almost see that in defined head or undefined head. So, it's the key for me, the foundational thing of all of the head center is patience with our mental process. Watch it and surrender to it. And just, you don't have to make any decisions from it, Okay. So being occupied with questions that don't matter. Of course, the not self question is always, am I thinking about something that doesn't matter? Does this matter? Am I trying to answer somebody else's question? To me, it's like, does it matter? It covers, like, does it matter to me in this moment right now? Does it concern me? And like 80% of the time or 90% of the time, the answer is no, it doesn't matter. Okay, so some of the not self-talk can sound like, I need to find something inspiring. Maybe if I go there, I'll find something inspiring. I need to find an answer to my question. Where can I go to find answers? I've got to understand or make sense of this. Who can I talk to find the answers? Who knows? Who knows the answers? And that's all not self, meaning if you hear yourself thinking that and you have an undefined head, you can go, whoa, 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 okay. I'm thinking about something that doesn't matter. I don't need to go and find answers. I can be okay with the uncertainty, with the unknown, with the inspiration. Okay, and seriously. And then the healthy version of the the healthy version of the undefined center is being open to inspiration and questions from anywhere and everyone, not taking on the pressure of other people's need for answers, being open to new insights and mental sparks and all of that stuff, and not identifying with the pressure to need to know, just being like, I don't have to know that. I can just, here, why don't you sit with me?
Okay, I'll sit.
Okay, sit with me. And then withdrawing when confused or doubtful, just seeing what's confusing. Okay. So yeah, and then of course, any undefined center is where we're here to gain wisdom over life, like gain wisdom about what does matter and what's worth answering, what questions are worth answering, who is inspiring, who confuses me and makes me feel doubt, who am I around when I feel that, and not in a blaming way, right? Like you were saying, Tiff, more just in a noticing, and then following your strategy and authority in or out of every situation or relationship. Yeah, and so I think that's generally the mechanics that we look at with the head center. Does anyone have any points to bring up or questions? Thoughts?
I just want to make sure everybody has their body graph. Is anybody like, oh my God, what is going on here? 'Cause I want to make sure you guys are like taken care of. I think everybody has theirs. Corey, do you have yours? Sorry, you're going in and out. Maybe you aren't. Maybe you're doing other things. But I.
Well, you can go to my body. Yeah, you can go to my body graph and do a free one. Now it's not going to have all these features that you might see popping up on mine, but you can get a free one. Yeah. So anyway, just to bring that up, you can see your centers and type and profile and.
Okay. And it's so fun for me to see the evolution of Wise Guys, because we started as like an astrology company a long time ago, and so this is interesting. Like I feel like astrology is kind of gateway into human design. It's not for everyone. We're not going to see the entire membership enjoying this facet of the membership, but I'm so glad that I do see people watching the replays, and I'm just like, this is fascinating that we've been able to come together and learn some really interesting stuff. And there's like a difference between learning and being inspired and being open to understanding our personal mechanics, and then going crazy and using this stuff against ourselves, right? So hopefully this is just helping all of us to be in alignment with who we are, appreciating each other's differences, learning from each other. And I just thank you so much, Leisha. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Thank you. I love doing this because it's such a good, you know, touchstone for me and kind of the signposts of either side. It's like, oh yeah, okay. And then my awareness is, you know, kind of enhanced. And then I see another layer of where my open head is coming in to my own life, you know, so it's a gift. It's a gift for me.
So you want to give us a little sneak peek? We're going to do Ajna next time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we kind of, you know, we just as a Ajna is where like the certainty thing comes in, you know, it's, am I pretending to be certain? Am I trying to convince everyone that I'm certain? If you're defined Ajna, then you are here to find the answers and kind of be certain in your own thing. Right. So, it's moving down from that head center. So we'll kind of get into that next, but I pulled up again, we said it's like, that's the neocortex of the brain, and it's where the organizing of the information that comes into the gray matter starts to happen. So, yeah, you can see here thoughts, answers, opinions, insights, ideas, and conceptualizing. But it has to do with certainty. And if you're undefined Ajna, you know, you're not here to be certain. So it's like, hey, you know what? Uncertainty is a state of being. So it's the surrendered thing again, you know, surrendering to the uncertainty.
Cool. So if you guys like want to, not that you need to get ahead of the curve, but you could look at your chart and see what those different gates are and start looking at them. That would really prepare you to have some questions or some observations to share with us, because this is really a learning lab. We're all learning from each other. And as you can see, Leisha has what, 47 and 11, get those gates.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And 47 is, you know, oppression and realization. So that's fun. And 11 is peace and ideas. So, you know, of course, they're both deeper, but yeah.
Yeah. And I have 64, so we make a bridge there.
Yes. And you have 4, I think. I think we bridge both of these.
I also
no,
have,
you do you have 4?
I do have 4, and I have 56. You and I have lots
That's
of
right.
bridges
That's
going
what
on
it is.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're like, when we come together, there's like a whole other, you know, it's
Brain.
a third entity that actually is like operating on it. And it's so amazing. It feels like I always send her like lightning bolt emojis, because I'm like, you know, this being over here, this Tiff Leisha being, it's like full of lightning bolts. I mean, same with April, you know, it's really cool to see the mechanics of it once you can start to see them, you know.
Yeah. And okay, well, I think let's close, and we'll hope to see you guys next month. First Thursdays at noon. If you're having any problems or questions with your membership and logging in and finding it, tell me like, hey, it was useful to get the email reminder today, or stop emailing me, or whatever, you know. I really
Too much. No.
Yeah. So I'm so glad we're here together learning this. It's a fascinating time to be alive. And, you know, we'll see you guys next month.
Ain't that the truth? Bye.